The cause of migration can be narrowed down to two things: push factors and pull factors. These can be branched into three categories: cultural, economic, and environmental. Pull factors are things that draw migrants to a particular location, as migration does not necessarily need to be from country to country. An example of an economic pull factor is when a country has employment opportunities. An example of a cultural pull factor could be a type of government, such as a democracy, which provides people with individual rights. An example of an environmental pull factor is an attractive region that is neither too hot nor too cold. A push factor is something that causes people to emigrate from their current location. An example of an economic push factor is a recession, depression, or simply a lack of jobs. An example of a cultural push factor, is a civil war or persecution of a certain group of people, such as Jews during World War II. An example of an environmental push factor is pollution, which can be harmful to people's health, causing them to lose their jobs because they are being harmed and have to go to the hospital and get treated. These factors can be coupled together and form what we know today as migration. Immigration with an I is known as arriving to a certain location. Emigration with an E is moving from a certain location. Migration can be from country to country or from region to region in the same country. Immigration can be a negative impact on the people who are living in the country that the immigrants are coming to. For example, when Irish workers went to Ellis Island to immigrate into the United States to find jobs, They were forced to go through a health screen before they were admitted into the country so they wouldn't be carrying any viruses with them. The Europeans that immigrated to the Americas brought viruses with them. These Europeans had built up immunities and had taken the vaccine for illnesses such as smallpox and tuberculosis. Sometimes, they knowingly infected the people who did not have immunities to these diseases. Europeans gave out blankets infected with smallpox, which led to a mass population decline. Typically, migration is a choice made by the migrants. Sometimes people are forced to migrate, such as the Jews being sent to the ghettos and concentration camps by the Nazis in World War II. In this lecture, we are going to cover 3 migratory events in recent history: the Great Migration of African Americans in the United States, the movement of Jews to Israel in 1948, and the partition of British India in 1948.
The Great Migration of African Americans in the United States. Between 1915 and 1970, more than 6 million African Americans moved out of the South to cities across the Northeast, Midwest, and West. This relocation, called the Great Migration, resulted in a massive demographic shifts across the United States. This is a map showing the migration patterns in the United States during this time. African Americans were forced from their homes due to the lack of economic opportunities and to avoid harsh segregation laws. Many blacks moved to the northern region of the United States, where they looked for industrial jobs needed during World War I. Chicago and New York saw an exponential growth in their African American population. However, migrants had to work under poor conditions. Even though they emigrated to avoid prejudice, African Americans still received racist remarks. The Harlem Renaissance occurred during this Great Migration and sparked new styles of music, writing, and art. These art pieces were very colorful and were usually about the African American culture. Was born in the heart of the Harlem Renaissance and is a renowned painter, sculptor, illustrator, and muralist. He is most known for his murals in the Harlem Hospital. In the year 1990, his creation of Martin Luther King Jr.'s bust was placed in the White House. and it became the first image of an African American displayed in the White House. One of the many famous writers of this time is Langston Hughes, who is known for many poems such as A Dream Deferred and As I Grew Older. A more jazz style of music also occurred during this time, which led to the famous corporation Motown. Jews during World War II. During World War II, the Jewish population in Germany were being persecuted and sent off to terrible concentration camps. This is an example of an involuntary migration because they were forced to leave their homes. About 6 million Jews were killed. The movement of Jews to Israel. This movement began with Zionism, which is a form of nationalism of Jews and the Jewish culture that supports a Jewish nation state. This movement led to the State of Israel and the protection of the Jewish nation in Israel. Jews of all persuasions, left, right, religious, and secular, joined to form the Zionist movement and worked together toward these goals. Disagreements led to rifts, but ultimately, the common goal of a Jewish state and its ancient homeland was attained. In February 1947, Great Britain, a declining empire, gave up control of Palestine to the United Nations. On November 29, 1947, the General Assembly of the United Nations voted to partition Palestine, providing both Arabs and Jews with their own land. The partition of British India. India and Pakistan won their independence in 1947, and they agreed to split colonial India into two separate states. One with the Muslim majority, which is Pakistan, and one with a Hindu majority, which is India. This partition caused the largest mass migration in human history. Roughly 10 million people were forced to move. There was much violence and many riots. About 1 million people were killed. Pakistan was created to be a homeland for Muslims. However, many Muslims stayed in India. It is believed that Muhammad Ali Jinnah, leader of the Muslim League, wanted a separate state for Muslims in order to gain power for the Muslim community. Another reason why these separate states were made so quickly is because of Britain withdrawing their power out of India due to the fact that it was devastated by war and could not keep their extended empire within their grasp.